So the human body is a physical object, but it's a special type of physical object because, as far as we know, the human body is human consciousness is the only biological organism, the only physical objects that have a subjective aspect to it. They're basically what makes humanity special is that there's this disembodied voice in our head. And we don't know from whence it comes. We don't. So with the senses, which we would call, what I'm calling the physical world, is the realm of the senses. So these, we see something, we can hear everything that's here that we experience as sight, hearing, touch, smell, taste, can be, the source of that can be found exterior to the body, right? So one of the big problems, the biggest problem with this whole consciousness thing, and why no one can get anywhere, is the ambiguity of it all. It's, unfortunately, neuroscientists have just delegated all experience to just firings of neurons in the brain. So there's no distinction between the voice in the head and the senses, right? So now it's all mixed up, jumbled up inside the brain, and there's no clear distinction between what the body is and what the mind is. So there needs to be a clear distinction. So in order to measure something, it needs to understand something and to talk about it. There needs to be clear and definite boundaries and definitions. And what I'm suggesting is a starting point. So, mind, in my model, mind is the voice in the head. 90% of it is just the blah, blah, blah that's going on in your head, right? And that is non-physical. It doesn't matter. We have to completely forget that neuroscience. Just forget neuroscience completely, because it just adds to confusion. It doesn't get anywhere. It's another one of Maya's plays to just keep things ambiguous, and so that we can never get anywhere. So we don't know what the voice in the head is, and we don't know its source, right? So we're trying to figure out, basically, the voice in the head. Where does it come from? So it's non-physical, right? So and what we need to realize is that these problems, the most fundamental problem, is deeply, deeply rooted in our psyche and in the language. It's embedded in the language and in our psyche to such a deep degree that we don't even recognize how it's steering us towards materialism. All the time, our language is biased towards things. material things, right? So the word thing itself, the connotation is that a thing is a physical object. So then we come up with the system of thing and nothing, right? So, and these deep philosophical paradoxes are relating this problem. They're showing that there's a problem with the model of thing and nothing. So why is there something rather than nothing, right? That's, I guess, called one of the, maybe the biggest philosophical question that can be asked is, why is there something rather than nothing? And another one is, how does something come from nothing? So these are showing that there's an error with the model because they're unanswered. Throughout all of history, they're unanswered. So so nothing, right? The word nothing, it's no thing, right? So nothing requires the arising and passing of thing, right? It's no thing. You're negating the thing, but the thing is prior, right? So nothing cannot exist prior to thing, for there cannot be knowledge of thing prior to its existence. So we can't just say that there was nothing. Let's say that prior to the Big Bang, you can't even call that nothing, because if it's in a chronological order, there's no thing hasn't arisen yet, right? The universe hasn't arisen. There are no things yet prior to the arising of the universe at the Big Bang. But if it hasn't arisen yet, then we don't know of thing. Thing hasn't arisen yet, right? So there's no such thing as thing. So you can't negate thing before it ever arose, before it ever existed, right? So nothing is the lack of a thing. It's the annihilation of a thing. But what my model does is that it recognizes that there can be phenomena that are not things, that aren't physical. Like, this is completely obvious, unless you start thinking that they're all just electrical impulses in the brain. That's where the whole problem starts, is because obviously the voice in your head is not a physical thing. It's that simple. It's not a physical thing. But according to the thing-nothing model, if it's not a physical thing, it simply cannot exist, correct? In this model, either it's a thing or it's nothing. So what my model does is it introduces non-things. So it still exists, but it's just not a fucking thing. How is this so difficult to understand for you materialists? You can't measure nostalgia. You can't measure a voice in your head, right? There's no way. So that's the problem. So So when you remove the third thing, the third aspect, which is the observer, if you and this is what science has done, right? With and the language, right? The language of thing nothing, it's only this and this without recognizing the middle one, the state of superposition. So we have to change what consciousness is, because talk of consciousness where thoughts and sensations are all just mumbled in, jumbled in the same set, and they call that consciousness, well, there's no way to get anywhere from there. So what my model does is it's consciousness is simply awareness of something. So I've changed the ground of being. So consciousness in Hinduism and Advaita Vedanta, consciousness was the frame of reference, the unchanging frame of reference upon which all experience occurs, right? There must be something non-moving and unchanging upon which all that rises and passes, what it's framed against, right? Upon. That you always need a frame of reference in order to focus on something. To see something, there needs to be something in the background, or something that's seeing. So awareness is what the universe consists of. It's the reality. And everything that arises and passes, and every experience arises and passes, right? Every single thought arises and passes. Every single object arises and passes. Every single experience arises and passes, right? So what is it arising and passing from and to? All right, so there's one thing going on. There's one process going on, and that is the awareness is coming back onto itself. That's there's only one substance. It's not even it's so difficult because it's the frame of reference. It's that which is not experienced. So in a way, the waking state, the frame of reference for the waking state, which we call life, but life does not come and go, right? Life does not arise and pass. Birth and death arise and pass within life, upon life. So this is the problem, is that non-existence, right? Non-existence, the idea of non-existence is a fundamental problem. And the fear of non-existence that comes along with believing that if you're not a thing, then you just go into nothingness, that there's just nothing. So now that there's non-things, there can be Mind. We can put mind in its own category. It's no longer, because the dividing line needs to be obvious, right? So why don't we use an obvious dividing line, which is the greatest obvious, most obvious distinction between mind and body is interior and exterior to the skin, right? This is so obvious and yet so difficult to try to get out because of the language. There isn't language. You see what I mean? Is that there's no such thing. Everything that we say, thing, everything's related to thing, nothing, right? Everything is related in our language to the word thing, right? So materialism is hardwired into our psyche. Unless we adapt the language to include, to recognize that phenomena that are not physical can still fucking exist. So there's no way to fix the mind-body problem by using the thing-nothing model and not adapting it. It's not possible, right? You need to change the most fundamental, there needs to be a subtle shift at the most fundamental level of language possible. And that's this. That is changing the word nothing to potential. So there's no longer, so the zero, so this is all part of my fundamental model of reality, and it's the same triune system. So this is it, like this is the fundamental model of reality, because all of reality is explained in 3 characters. There's just 3 characters, symbols, in every line, which is a holographic expression of the same information. There's no such thing as non-existence, right? So, so it's a state of superposition. The reality is the state of superposition that cannot, and the most succinct way in which to express that is through the duality. But the reality of it cannot be described beyond the duality. If it's a holographic expression, right? This is a holographic expression of the same information. So if you dig into this, it'll just pop out more positive and negative. If you dig into this, it'll just pop out more net positive. It'll just keep spitting out the duality. If you don't include the third thing, it'll just keep producing more duality. It'll just keep spitting out more of the duality. So, so the definition of concave relates to the curve. Basically, the definition of concave is the interior of a curve. And the definition of convex is the exterior of a curve. So the definition of the concave does not relate at all to the convex, and the definition of the convex does not relate at all to the definition of the concave. They're both relating directly in superposition, in parallel, right, to curve. Curve is the reality from which concave and convex get their existence from. So if we use the thing nothing model to try to define curve, it would say that convex is the outside of a curve, and then concave would be, its definition would be the lack of convex. I know I've said this before, but like, how can you not understand this? How can people not understand this? I don't understand how people don't understand. So, how can you have a system where part of that system, it's a dualistic system, right? They like to think that it's monism, but it's not. There's a thing and a nothing. If you have everything, there's always nothing next to it. Oops, I farted. So obviously the thing nothing model is wrong. It's wrong because it generates these questions. And it's wrong because it can't even describe the state of curve. You can't have a system where, in order for it to operate, one of the aspects of that system needs the annihilation of the other part of the system in order for it to exist. How does that work? How does a system that's built antagonistically within itself, that one of the aspects of it requires the death of the other, the non-existence of the other thing, in order for that process to exist? Well, how does that work? It's always in constant conflict with itself. It's in if you look at that system of thing nothing, it's always combating with itself. The nothing is always trying to annihilate the thing, and the thing is always, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense, does it? So, and this is embedded, and this is how embedded it all is in Western thought, because everything's based on competition, right? Evolution looks at the functioning of nature not as symbiosis and harmony and unity, but as a competition against a lack of resources. So, and now look at our Western institutions. They're all set up on this. The systems, the energy that they use to keep them going, the energy that's generated that makes them operate, these institutions, is adversarial, right? You have the defense against the prosecution, right? It's a battle. They're trying, and then you've got the Democrats versus the Republicans, right? So the legal system and the governmental system, well, and of course, all of the economy too, right, is all competition. So what happens is that with these institutions, eventually all of the energy of that institution, of that system, goes into just trying to beat the other half. You see? That's why all of these institutions are collapsing right now, and they were doomed to fail from the start, because it's all based, if you go deep into the psyche, on this thing nothing model that's in constant conflict with itself. So the government no longer does it operate as it was intended to help smooth out problems within society. Now all of the energy is to just beat the other half. See? It's the governmental system, why it's no longer efficient and doesn't do what it was built to do, is because fundamentally it is one of these institutions that's built on this other than model. That the goal becomes to win, right? All they care about is winning and beating the other half. Same with the legal system. It has nothing to do with truth anymore. It has to do with winning, with beating the opponent. But why are they opponents? Why can't we be symbiotic? Why can't we live in symbiosis with nature? Why are we competing with nature for these limited resources on the planet? And why are we over-consuming all of these resources and not acting in unity with nature? It's because of the voice in the head. So the fundamental problem that no one seems to recognize is that the voice in the head, thought, has nothing to do with the physical realm. It's the grand illusion is that the thought realm is correlated, connected to the physical realm in some innate way. The only way that the thought realm, the voice in your head, right? We're just going to keep it simple. The thought realm, the voice in the head, is correlated, connected with the realm of the senses as symbol, right? All of language is symbol. And the voice in your head is a zero spatial realm. It has zero spatial aspects to it, zero dimensional, right? And the way in which we read is one dimensional, right? Each one of these letters is a one dimensional. When I wrote it out, it was a one dimensional line. All of these, when I write them out, are one dimensional, right? One dimensional lines. And these one-dimensional lines are being displayed on a two-dimensional surface. So it's only visual, right? These symbols exist both in the physical realm, it's only visual though, right? Only the visual aspect of the physical realm of the senses is being used to express language, to interpret language, and to interact with language. And we read it in a linear fashion too, don't we? So what's happening is that our focus is being narrowed from an expansive, this field of senses. It's being narrowed into focusing on one point, and that point is going in a linear fashion. All right, so zero dimensional, blah, 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 one dimensional symbol on a two dimensional surface within the three dimensional realm. So symbol is a conduit through which the zero-dimensional thought realm, which the source is not found exterior to the body, interacts with the sensual realm, which I call the physical realm. But it's in a lesser dimensional. You see how it comes through. So again, this could be time and space. That time, because thoughts are zero spatial dimensional, but that must mean that they're multi-time dimensional. Thought, the voice in the head, is time. It's coming from a time-separated phenomenon. It's a time-separated phenomenon. Whereas the physical realm of the senses is spatial separation. So the voice in the head is basically you that's separated through time. So how do we investigate the non-physical aspect of being a human, which obviously exists? You can't deny the entire subjective interior world that's going on. If because the thoughts that we're having, the voice in the head, is just firings of neurons in the brain, and that's what makes them illusory, right? That this feeling, the thoughts that we have, the I thought that makes it appear as though there's a separately existing identity. If that's an illusion, because it's not exterior, we can't touch it, we can't hear it, we can't smell it, we can't taste it. And so it's an illusion just because it's firings of neurons in the brain. Well, then all of this has to be an illusion too then. You can't have one without the other. If all of this is just firings of neurons in the brain, as well as thoughts are firings of neurons in the brain, then it's all illusion, right? You can't just say, well, this is real and thoughts are not real, because if you're delegating it all to just firings of neurons in the brain, then it all has to be equally unreal or real, right? You neuroscientists, you can't have it both ways. So yes, it's all illusory. I agree that the appearance of a separately existing self is illusory, but that doesn't mean that self is illusory. That means that the whole fucking thing is illusory. This is the reality. The state of superposition is the reality, and it just so happens that is unmeasurable. So how do we investigate the non-physical thought aspect of what it is to be human? Well, you can't do it by measuring shit, because measuring only gives rise to physics. And physics, obviously there are things that exist that cannot be measured by physics. And that's mind. So you materialists who are questioning whether consciousness is an illusion, you're insane. You're delusional. It's a very special state of insanity to question your own existence. So you're not questioning your own existence, you're questioning what the fuck mind is. Where is it coming from? What's its purpose? And the only way to do that is through meditation. You can't investigate the voice in the head using the voice in the head. right? If it actually is the problem, if the voice in the head is actually lying to you, it is actually a state of ignorance, then to keep using that as in philosophy or all of these systems of thought, it's just going to be more lies. Right? So you have to meditate, and that's what the spirit part is. That's what religion is getting at, is that in order to find the reality of this, you have to stop measuring things using physical things, and you have to stop measuring things with your mind too. So it's really, I understand how difficult it is to accept that the voice in your head actually has nothing to, it's superimposed, it's a reality, an imagined reality that's superimposed over the sensual realm that I'm calling the physical realm. There's no connection at all. The only connection is through symbol, and symbol if you it's so hard because we think that language is relating thought. The language appears to show that there's a direct correlation between thoughts and sensations, but there isn't. There's no correlation at all. There's no connection between the voice in the head and the physical realm. It's just more voice in the head that is trying to convince us that the voice in the head is relating to the physical realm. It's kind of like a virus that it's your attention. So awareness is life. Awareness, basically, this is all awareness. Observer, all of this is the state of superposition, which could be called the awareness. So awareness is life. Awareness, your attention, where you put your awareness, is the life energy. So right now, you are, let's say, reading this you're reading this book, and you're assuming the antagonist's perspective. So your awareness is coming through this body, right? It's not generated, consciousness is not generated in this body, but awareness is coming through it because your interest, awareness, God, is interested in reading this book through this body. It's experiencing this movie, this video game through the body. So what the voice in their head is, it's all samsara. So in the end, what ties us all together is that all of this is a game. It's a game that that God has designed for its entertainment. And what keeps you in the game is, and the purpose of the game is to find conclusion of the game, like a mystery or a labyrinth, okay, or a puzzle. So what keeps us in the game and keeps us in the labyrinth, keeps us from discovering the mystery and concluding the game, is that our awareness is being pulled away from this, from from the reality onto thoughts and sensations. And thoughts and sensations are the labyrinth. So it's just another iteration of the infinite cycle of samsara. And the next big iteration that's occurring is that the awareness is moving from accepting the physical realm as of the sensations as fundamental reality to moving towards thought, the thought mental realm becoming an accepted fundamental reality, but neither of them are. It's a Ponzi scheme, right? And that's why it appears as though if you assume that the mental realm is fundamental, then it will appear as though thought is running the show. And that's why mathematicians believe that math is fundamental and that the physical realm arises from mathematics. And then if you take the body position, if you assume, so idealism and then materialism, if you assume that the physical realm of the senses is fundamental reality, then matter, the movement of matter is fundamental, and thoughts arise from the matter. But it's a Ponzi scheme. You see how it's bouncing back and forth. It's trying to bootstrap itself into being reality through this Ponzi scheme, always comparing one to the other, but they're both illusory, right? So the only way that you're going to be able to prove this or disprove this is by transcending this. The only way to experience green, which is where yellow and blue come from, the only way to understand what you are, what reality is, what the curve is, what the state of superposition is that you need to start investigating the stillness. You need to start investigating that which doesn't change. So we can't do that by measuring anymore. We can't, it's done. You need to start meditating, and you need to find the source from which all thoughts arise and pass, and all sensations arise and pass, because all thoughts arise and pass, and all sensations arise and pass. So there's nothing real and substantial in any of that, is it? It all arises and passes against the backdrop of that which does not change, which is the awareness. But if you're always focused on the thoughts of the sensations, well, that's change, isn't it? They're always changing. So you can't find the reality by focusing on that which is always the appearances of the reality. I understand all of this. I understand everything. And I know sometimes I mumble and I fumble, but it explains everything. And the way my mind is, I see everything it's all explained, everything. And it's really hard to not jump from, oh, well, it explains this and explains this, because it explains everything. And it's almost impossible to get it out in a linear, just talking about it, because my mind wants to fucking explode or implode or something, because I see it all. I just see all of it so fucking clearly, and then no one else does. No one else does. And I I do. So I understand all of this, and it just, I've resolved the mind-body problem. But no one wants to engage in it because they all just want to reinforce their own belief systems. Everyone's trying to make the Ponzi scheme work, right? It doesn't. Everyone just keeps trying to rearrange. It's not going to be one subtle little tweak of something that's pre-existing. Everything's fucking wrong. Everything's wrong at the very most fundamental level of thing nothing. So if your model can't resolve this and this, mine does, because it gets rid of the word nothing. There's no such thing as non-existence. It's because we're using the dualistic model that's insufficient, lacks the nuance to describe reality. All right, there it is again. Same fucking thing over and over and over and over. But I don't know what else to do. How could it be more clear? Okay, I guess I'm done. This will just be ignored like the rest of them. So whatever, I'm just gonna keep trying, I guess. Oh, please listen to me. Please listen to me. Please listen to me. If you have any authority in academia to actually make a difference and fix this whole fucking thing, then please. All right, that's it.